And we are live. Greetings, friends of the apocalypse. Welcome to Podcast at Ground Zero, your home of the apocalypse, for episode 46, Twilight 2000, Ask Frank. So we are having Frank Frey back on the show. We originally had Frank on around like 9 or 10, I believe. I don't quite remember, so it seemed like quite a long time ago, because it was. I can't believe we're almost up to 50 episodes already. It's pretty exciting stuff here. And if you guys can't hear Scott, because Scott's muted for the moment, and Scott just gave this one finger salute.
Would you like me to make noise? I can.
I would love you to make noise. No, I was digging. So tonight we have myself, Mr. Glancy, and Frank Frey with us to discuss, well, it's more as Frank's going to be discussing Twilight 2000 more, because we put out, when I put the event up, to ask Frank if anybody had any questions for Frank related to Twilight 2000, because last time we kind of just, Frank gave us a little history of what he did and talked about and things like that, but this time we wanted to be more of a Q&A from the actual fans, so they could ask any questions, any burning questions they may have had for Frank regarding Twilight 2000. So that's what we're going to be doing this week. If you're listening live, and if you still have any questions that you want to ask, you could go ahead and still post them, because I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. So just post them onto the event page. You don't have to follow directions and post them on that one. Just post them on the page at this point, just so we can easily see them. Or sometimes people post on the YouTube page. I'll keep an eye on that as well. So we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. But first, we want to share a couple of things, a couple of in the news kind of things, because I know one major important thing that happened last week was the official announcement for everybody's favorite game, Fallout. So we got Fallout 4 coming out. So there was a lot of news, not a press about that.
Hallelujah!
On E3, they talked a lot about stuff. Now, again, I'm still going to be curious to see how it all pans out, because I loved Fallout 3. I put hundreds of hours into that game. Loved it. Fallout Vegas, Scott put just as much time, put more time into that than I put into Fallout 3. I couldn't finish the game. Personally, it didn't engage me like Fallout 3 did. For whatever reason,
that's because you're a communist homosexual.
It is, maybe. But I don't know. There was too much. I didn't really care for the crafting and how you had to make everything. It seemed too.
You're going to hate this new game then, because it looks like
they are bringing crafting back. Now, there are some of the aspects of the crafting that I do like. Make your own stronghold, make your own fortress, make your own village. That looks cool. That's cool. Setting up, caravans between different locations. That all looks cool. But when it starts getting into like, whoa, we have 50 base weapons, and you can modify everything and have a combat like 7,000 different weapons you can make. To me, that's a bit of that's too much for me. Too much overload. It's like I just want my base weapons, and I can pick and choose.
What was the game? Borderlands.
Oh,
Didn't Borderlands have that same issue?
Yeah. And again, I completed that game, but after a while, it gets to me. For me, it gets to be too much, because there's too much fiddly bits, too much. Like, okay, well, here's my base weapon, but I can modify it about 75 different ways, and it's too many. Sometimes I feel too many choices or too many choices. It's like I like having a broad range of things to select from. So like, okay, I could pick this for this situation, that for that situation. I have choices, but when you have this many choices, to me it's too much, because you know how I love too much resource management. But overall,
that's what you get for working in corporate America.
Exactly.
If there's too much fiddly bits, it starts to feel like work.
Yeah, it does. It does. But otherwise, it looks awesome. It looks good. The setting again. It looks like it's in Boston, right? Is that what it looked like, Scott? Boston. So
it is all confirmed. It's all confirmed that it's Boston. Certainly, they've shown enough Boston areas, and I think they've also shot down most of the bullshit leaks that were lies. That, like, for instance, you can only play a male character. you can only play one gender and one race. There was this presumption that or this these so-called leaks that came out about that. And the other BS leak was that it was going to be like 5 years after the nukes. And it looks like how you're getting into the future from the past is the setup is that you go into the Vault 111 and you're cryogenically frozen.
That's some of my favorite subject matter is cryogenically frozen people coming into the post-apocalyptic future.
Starting with Buck Rogers, because that was the original Buck Rogers story. That Buck Rogers gets cryogenically frozen in a cave in a mine collapse and wakes up and it's the 24th century. So yeah, you move forward through cryogenics and you go looking for your family. Because their cryogenic containers are empty. Most of the Vault 111 is supposed to be destroyed. You're the last survivor, but some of them are empty. And the question is, when did your family get out? 100 years ago? Last week? So that's sort of the primary quest that seems to be set up. But yes, you can sculpt your own weapons from junk. You can build your own citadels and booby traps from junk. So that's good.
Oh yeah, like you set up, guard towers with sentry. I mean, all that stuff was really cool.
It's literally post-apocalyptic Sims.
Yeah.
Where which is okay. I'm good for that.
Yeah. Oh, totally. No, I'm not saying I'm not gonna buy it. I'm buying it.
the Brotherhood of Steel is definitely involved in it, although they're not the good guys that they were in Fallout 3. Apparently, they're more like the neutral faction in Fallout New Vegas, where you can take them or leave them. But it looks like it's actually the it's actually the Capital Waste Brotherhood, because they've got the vertibirds that they've captured from the Enclave and revamped and reinvented and building their own. One of the things that looked really hot was the part where you can fly over the wasteland. You can look down on building roofs, and they've got jetpacks, they've got the vertibirds, so they've really changed the environment to be very 3D.
Oh yeah, they've had a number of years, and they've really stepped up. Plus, they have the next gen, processing and graphics powers to do a lot more. So so you better start saving your shekels, Scott, because you're gonna have to upgrade your system to play it. So.
Well, my question is, I've asked it before. Do I go for an Xbox One, or do I go for a PC? And part of me thinks I should go for a PC, because then I can get everything on it. A PC will then have Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, and I'll get to play with all the mods. Although, holy crap, they're now talking about you can apply mods to the console. That's dangerous shit.
Yeah.
I lost enough time to Fallout that if there was the ability to apply mods to the console game, that's dangerous. That's a good. I'll just end up hooked up to. I'll just end up being catheterized. IV, 1,000-yard stare, just working those thumbs. That'll be it for me.
Yeah, well, lucky. Well, I already have an Xbox One, so I'm good to go on getting it there, because but that's coming out. Well, besides that coming out, there's so much coming out in the next 6 months. So 6 months to a year, it's too much. Like the Fallout Vegas, you got the Mad Max game coming out. Plus, there's a couple of other games that I want to play that are not posted. There's Rainbow Six Siege, which looks really good, because I love the Rainbow Six Vegas series.
Dude, I haven't even caught up on the last Grand Theft Auto game.
Yeah, you don't need Grand Theft Auto.
I haven't picked up Grand Theft Auto since San Andreas, for that matter. And there's plenty of games for the 360 that I haven't finished or started. Hell, XCOM, for Christ's sakes.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm playing a few games. Like I said, Mad Max is on my queue. Fallout 4 is on my queue. Rainbow Six Siege is on my queue, because I love that game. Tom Clancy's The Division, which looks kind of apocalyptic, kind of micro-apocalypse. It's coming out. So we got some good games coming out. And also that what Bethesda did, along with to keep people interested until the game comes out, they came out with an app called Fallout Shelter. Let's see if I can get it to focus in on this. Probably not.
How are you enjoying Fallout Shelter?
No, let's see if I can get this to focus in here. Hold on. Probably not, because it's a bright screen. Well, you can kind of see it a little bit there. Fallout Shelter, it's only available right now on the iOS, but my understanding is it's coming out on Android as well down the road. So, it's resource management, unfortunately, but it is it sucks you in. It's just addictive to keep on just playing it and building your shelter and sending people out, and you could put people in rooms together to see if you can get them to mate to make more people. And what I'm doing is because one of the dwellers, wasteland dwellers that came to my shelter was 3Dog. So I'm doing everything in my power to make sure 3Dog is the one who's populating that vault. I have him pairing up with every woman in that bunker to make more people. So he is the father of everybody. But you know what?
He's the father of a new world.
He is.
Building a new world.
And I tested to see, were they going to address? Wow, I just drew a blank here. Is
in Fallout, hold on, I'm gonna say something different so you'll remember what you're saying.
No. Incest. They address that. If you put it, because I don't remember who was who, so I would put him in the room with another female that was, and it's like, oh, I love spending time with my family. So he won't pair up with them. I'm like, that's cool.
Because 3Dog is fighting the good fight and has a moral center.
Oh, I know, but no, it's like they really thought about that, even in this little stupid app game. They really addressed that, which is really cool. So
I keep seeing stories on Kotaku about crazy experiments you can do in the vault. My question was, can you do it like an actual vault? Like, can you make it like Vault 34, where
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Overstock it with weapons and overcrowd it and see if the population starts murdering each other.
I haven't got that far yet. I'm still struggling just to keep the power on. With the
somebody was showing screenshots where they named everyone Gary.
Yeah, you could change the names of people in there. It's interesting. It's worth. It's free. It's worth checking out.
Yeah, free's always good.
Yeah, they have in-app stuff you could buy, but you don't have to waste your time with that. So that's pretty cool. And then the last thing I want to mention, then we'll get rolling on the questions, is I mentioned, I think, last show that the Big Finish Productions was put out season 2 of the Survivors audio drama. I picked that up, and I'm almost through it. Again, excellent. It has a lot of the same. In this one, they have a lot of the same actors now, like from the original, like Caroline Seymour.
Oh, excellent.
Amy Grant's in it, and all the main characters. What's his name? Who's the main guy?
I've forgotten his name, but he's the one whose face ends up on the money in 3rd season, where that one person's trying to invent a currency, and he's like on the bill like he's George Washington.
Yeah,
you remember that?
No, I don't remember that, but it's cool is Big Finish has done a really good job with it. It has the same characters, other new characters in it, same time frames, but looking different little things that are going on between the TV series. It's kind of dark, overtone, unlike a lot of the other Big Finish stuff, which is all happy and but it's again, if you guys haven't I'm thinking after this comes out that we're gonna wind up having to do it. We've talked about Survivors and different, but I think we're going to just do Survivors as a show. We're going to talk about the original. I'm going to track down the remake, look at that, the audio, do the whole. I want to talk everything about Survivors because it's just such a very well done apocalyptic setting. I want to get into that. So again, Big Finish Productions has that available. So. All right, that's all I have. Unless you have something to add, Scott, I want to go ahead and start.
I wanted to ask, did Fallout's trailer drop on your birthday? Because Mr. Mayor of Bartertown, did it actually drop on your birthday?
When did it drop? My birthday was on Tuesday, the 2nd.
I can't. It may have dropped because I think they started the countdown on your birthday.
I'll tell you in a second here. Let me look at the posts on the page. Oh, and by the way, the deluxe edition, it comes with a pip board that you could run off your your smartphone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy as shit. Where the frack is it?
Don't ask me, man.
I'm scrolling. We posted a lot of shit about it. No, June 3rd.
Okay.
The countdown started
June 2nd.
On my birthday, and then it announced on the 3rd.
Screw it, that counts. I say that counts. It was your birthday, and for your birthday, you got a countdown clock.
I did, and then did you see that? Did you see that cool post I made about this guy's blog post about the history of post-apocalyptic RPGs?
No, I didn't see that.
You didn't see that post? I posted that on the 9th. This guy has a blog called Age of Ravens, and he's done there's 9 parts to it. He does a history of post-apocalyptic role-playing games, and there's a lot of cool stuff on there that I even wasn't aware of. So it's a good read. I posted on the 9th, so you could check that out. Okay, folks. All right, so
the last time we had Frank on, our sin was that we talked too much and didn't let Frank talk enough, and we are continuing that same sin. So we need to stop.
No, we haven't started yet. So
okay.
We haven't. We got rid of our in the news, blah blah blah.
Out of the way.
Now that's out of the way. Now starts the meat of the show, and Frank's our meat today.
You are the meat. You are the meat and the Jared and Scott sandwich.
That's disgusting. But
that'll make you comfortable.
You won't sleep for a week.
Well, that's a good quote to start the day off with.
Hey, what the hell?
All right, so I'm going to start not necessarily in the order that they were posted, but certainly in the order that I peeled them off the interwebs. And one of the questions came from someone titled Krista from Finland, which is interesting because the only people that I'm aware of who did Twilight 2000 scenarios or published Twilight 2000 material outside the United States were the Finns. There were some actual Finnish, like the Baltic source book or something, and they're the only guys that I know of who did any Twilight 2000. So Christian from Finland asks, do you know who the current owner of the IP for Twilight 2000 is? And are you aware of whether any official novels or stories based on the Twilight 2000 world have ever been published?
Well, I'd probably have to say that the current owner of the IP is probably Far Future Enterprises, Mark Miller's outfit. They just Traveler 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the rest of it goes, no, I was not aware of that. I don't think there have been any that I know of. Certainly there's a lot of interesting background.
I'm not aware of any either. Mr. Wallace, do you know of any official stories or novels set in the Twilight 2000 universe?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard of anything myself.
I gotta admit that I wrote a few chapters of a Twilight 2000 novel when I was in college in 1985 or 6 or something, which was completely ripping off Lone Star. Was it Lone Star, White Star? Is that the Red Star, Lone Star? The Texas scenario.
Oh yeah.
I completely ripped that off because I had no original thoughts. Still don't have many, but apart from my fanfic, I am not aware of any.
I think that's probably, Scott, where you're going to find it is people did a lot of fanfic. which is really great as far as I'm concerned. I have seen some examples of it online. It's pretty nifty.
Yeah. There are a number of websites I think that may include that are either set up to be fanfic sites, but I don't know how much traffic or how much material.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, as far as the foreign stuff goes, one of the regular posters on some of the Twilight 2000 forums is a guy, I believe he's either Swedish or Finnish, goes by the handle of Antenna.
Yes, you're right. I want to say he's Swedish.
Yeah, I believe he is, because I have a friend of mine who spent some time living in Sweden, and she's also a gamer. And she told me, she said, Frank, do you know that you've actually got a fan club in Gothenburg, Sweden? I'm like, what? Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah.
No, that's cool. Well, that's the weird thing is that there's the guy, there's Antenna's site, Antenna's page for Twilight 2000. There's the Finnish actual published licensed Twilight 2000 products. And then there's a fella who, the Julin forum, the forum Julin
Yes.
that has,
Yeah.
there's a guy named Alf Bergesen who publishes enormous amounts of stuff on Twilight 2000. He's a huge Twilight. He's also, with a name like Alf Bergensen, I suspect he might be from Scandinavia, which makes me wonder, what is it about Scandinavia that they liked Twilight 2000 better than most Europeans?
I think part of it is that it appeals. Twilight 2000 appeals almost, if you will, to almost the Viking in you, because it's very much that kind of world. The characters are very much you go out and if you're not trading, you're raiding, And the Vikings did that. The Vikings traded as much, if not more, than they actually raided, especially if they went up against somebody else that they knew could kick their butts. They would just go, let's talk about this instead.
Yes, you always break out the trade goods when you realize they'll kick your ass.
Yeah,
so let's be reasonable.
Yes, but I don't know. It's very interesting because one of my favorite science fantasy games is Fading Suns, which is, I don't know how popular it is here in America, but boy, it was really popular in Germany. And I suspect that maybe the same reason Twilight's popular in Scandinavia. It has an epic feel to it.
Certainly, the only other person I've ever heard of, was a European player, as I remember hearing somebody talking about how they were in Italy in the 80s, and so when they played Twilight 2000, they were playing Italian Warsaw Pact troops fighting against the, imperialist Western, running dog capitalists. Is how they played their Twilight.
Sounds like they were probably communists from northern Italy.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
So I've always wanted to know, how other countries, view the game, but it's, because again, Apocalypse has always looked more interesting when it's from somebody else's point of view.
Yeah, it is. And as far as novels or anything else goes, based on that, if you want to do it officially, you're probably going to have to get a hold of Mark Miller and company at Far Future Enterprises and go, hey, can I use this? Yeah.
More importantly, here's my completed manuscript. Please
Yes.
read it. And if you like it, would you be interested in publishing it, or can I give you a kickback? There'll have to be some sort of financial arrangement. And something else we didn't do when we jumped in because we assumed that everybody knows who Frank Frey is. Frank Frey, longtime writer for role-playing game industry, wrote a number of really classic works for the Twilight 2000 line. And the next question is about sort of the scenario that I think made your bones as far as everyone going, holy shit, this guy can write. It's about the Black Madonna. William Bargo asks that they have a question about the Black Madonna. In the adventure, the Black Madonna, just how hard was the horror supernatural beats supposed to be in the story? The first part of the adventure is very straightforward, forced 10 from Navarone stuff. But the second half, read and played out like a horror movie. How intentional was that? And how much did you emphasize, I guess, the supernatural aspects as when you play tested it?
First of all, that's really a very nice question. Why? Because somebody was playing it the way it was meant to be played. When you go into the catacombs under the Yasna Gora, the monastery, it's supposed to be scary as hell. I always think of Indiana Jones meets Hammer horror. Now, of course, there's a rational explanation for the whole thing eventually, but I really wanted to do that. I wanted to add that sense of the supernatural or the weirdness, because you're really talking about a world that is now shattered. Things have just gone to pieces.
It's a medieval world, and
Yeah.
medieval beliefs can come back into play.
Yes, it's actually a very medieval world. But I wanted to add that. I wanted to give them that sense of scariness. I think, if I can remember offhand, I believe when they crossed that running stream underground, when one of them mentioned the river Styx, which is the river you cross in I believe it's Greek mythology, to get to the underworld. And I wanted that kind of terror,
Well, I got to tell you, that was one of the river underwater, or the underground river is definitely one of the scariest parts. Having gone caving and seen water underground moving, it's intimidating, because it's as if you have no idea how deep it's going to go, if your next step's going to be a 10-foot drop off, So my players having to cross that river, they hated that. That was they hated that, and they especially hated when that douchebag started shooting them with the crossbow bolts while suddenly they're attacked by a medieval weapon underground, while crossing a black river. They didn't like that. They were unhappy with that.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that, and I didn't think of it at the time, but I would have probably also made references to D&D.
Yes.
Dungeon crawl. Wait a minute, I didn't know we were going to do a dungeon crawl in real life. It's amazing the stuff that you can put in there. I always like to talk about, I believe I've talked about it before, the infamous message that the guys that are reconning the east coast of America for a landing, they run across a abandoned convenience store, and scrawled on the wall is the famous quote, "That which is not dead cannot die." Yeah, and they're like, what? And then Cthulhu Fataga and Cthulhu, they're like, well, I guess we now know who started the war. Of course, what they didn't find was the body of the college student that had been working there who got killed there, and in his backpack was the Call of Cthulhu game with all his notes.
Was that something you threw at your players once upon a time?
Yeah.
Yeah, a number of keepers, and this is just my own question, a number of keepers used to run scenarios for Twilight 2000 set before the summer of 2000, where they do stuff where you were deep in World War III.
Yeah.
And then you play special forces missions. You'd give the players an opportunity to see what it was like with the lights still on, and then you take the lights away, and then it was like, having played in the world before it was fucked, and then playing in the world after the satellite radio sets are down, and nobody's heard from Washington, or Washington's abandoned, or whatever. That I know a number of keepers that I did not. Did you do that? It sounds like if you've got Spetsnaz swimming ashore in the United States to scout for an invasion site.
No. This was not Spetsnaz. These were actually units from CENTCOM. CENTCOM was coming home.
Oh, yes, because you played out not just because you wrote the Rapid Deployment Force source book, and then there was this whole campaign thing about the RDF getting home via Kenya and finally
Something
around
like
the Horn of
that,
Africa.
Yeah, anyway, to answer your question, yes, I did. I ran a whole campaign called Black Horse Forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a platoon from the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment with an anti-aircraft vehicle attached to them, kind of like, they were from Hotel Battery. I forget the actually what it was they had the Bradley with the 20mm Gatling cannon and the air defense radar on it.
Yeah.
Just for and they wind up taking a wrong turn during a snowstorm, and they wind up on the Czech border, and there were some clues, like one of the people they talked with was an old German who said, "Oh, you don't understand. They didn't retreat. They withdrew in good order." Fortunately, I had some guys that were savvy enough who had actually been in the military to understand what that meant.
Yeah. Yes.
And boy, did they get... And the beautiful part about that whole session was people so got into it that that tabletop talk, there wasn't any except for 2-1 to 2-0, 2-0 go. Roger, I have 5 Tango 7 2s, approximately 1,000 meters from my position.
Oh, that's hilarious if you can get them to talk the talk.
Yeah, they talk the
talk. They're now talking the jargon. They're inside the jargon.
Yeah, and they were an armored cav platoon, an old-style armored cav platoon.
Mm-hmm.
They had Bradleys. They also had a Sexta 3 M1 Abrams, because that's the old cav platoon.
My players started off. My players pooled all their points at the beginning of the game and got themselves an M1 Abrams, and it just proceeded to break all the time. It turned out to be the worst decision they ever made. Was we should have the best tank in the game, and then it turned out to be a maintenance hog. And I think they eventually ended up stuffing a white phosphorus grenade in the barrel and abandoning it because it was just an anchor around their necks. I can't even imagine trying to drag 3 Abrams around in that game system. Well, let's move on to our next question here, because Mr. Bargo also asks, and it's one of the things that I think everybody who was a war nerd who enjoyed the technical side of Twilight 2000, this is a big question for us. Writing for Twilight 2000 and GDW in general was full of military technical data. In this age, in the 1980s, in the age before the internet, his question is, what sources, other than, say, Jane's Defense Weekly, did you use to develop? Because you did the vehicle guides and the weapons guides. You did the NATO vehicle guide, the heavy weapons guide. Did you? What sources did you use?
Well, I was going to say, first of all, for the RDF source book, I was very lucky. I lived in Tampa. At MacDill Air Force Base is the headquarters of, well, it's now U.S. Central Command. Back then it was JRDF, Joint Rapid Deployment Force. And I had a friend of mine that worked there. So as he got me in, they loaned me the latest copy of Jane's Armored Vehicles, and I was on their mailing list, so I got other kinds of information. If you go to a lot of arms manufacturers, and you write them, or you just know where to get your information from. There used to be a magazine published called Miltech, and that thing was just loaded with information. For the let's say for the NATO source book, for the a lot, let's say for example for the British, I had the old SPI game, Army of the Rhine. So I had a full order of battle that I could work from.
Yes, I remember Army of the Rhine. Yeah.
And it wasn't, I kept up with it as much as I could, but I also did a little bit of cheating, figuring, okay, this is in the future. So who knows,
But still, you were able to get a lot of specific information before the day, like they said, before the technology age about this stuff, and we wondered, like, oh, the Russians, the enemies of China are stealing our ideas. Well, it's out there, Yeah.
Yes, it is. One of the ironic things was that Miltech, I couldn't get it anymore because somebody in the U.S. government would buy the entire incoming shipments and store them in a warehouse because they didn't want civilians getting this information. Well, the aggravating thing was, this was available throughout all of Europe, and if you were from the Soviet embassy, and you just walked into the magazine store and bought the damn thing.
So it was pulled off of American shelves, but it wasn't pulled off of European shelves.
No, because it was a European publication.
The national security apparatus looking out for our best interests again.
Yeah.
Wow.
God, it was hilarious. But I think it was Meltec. God, I'm gonna have to go back and see if I still have any of it left. I got a lot of it. One of my good friends who unfortunately passed away in 1999, was the wing historian down at MacDill Air Force Base. So he got me a lot of information.
Excellent.
So I grabbed whatever sources I could get my hands on, and used it.
I had a sort of a similar experience. The first draft of Delta Green in 1996. We didn't have the online data, so I was down in the at Gainesville, where you are. I was down at the university's library in their government documents section, looking up budgets in the congressional, budget. How many men work for the Intelligence Security Command of the U.S. Army? Well, there it is in the congressional documents. That's the only place to find it. And it was in big, giant, rolling document shelves that you had to turn the giant wheel, to move the shelves. Remember that nonsense?
Yeah, I used to work in GovDocs up at the University of South Florida.
Yeah. All right. Then you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Stephanie McKaylee asks, or says, "Hi, Frank. Were you aware of any future titles or works specifically being planned just before GDW folded?" And that's the first question. The follow-on is, if they had kept going, if they had stuck with the Twilight 2000 rather than, say, Merck or folded the company, was there something that you really wanted to see published that either you or somebody else you knew was working on?
And before you answer that, Frank, I just want to do. We have somebody message Colin, one of our fans who's on our last show.
Yes.
Agree.
He had some of the best material for Fury Road.
Oh yeah. He agrees with what Frank says about Tampa. He says, "I agree that Tampa was awash with military info in the 80s. I lived there. My father worked as a defense contractor, so there were always copies of Jane's Defense Weekly and International Defense Review sitting around."
Yep.
So somebody to corroborate what Frank was already saying.
Yeah, as far as future projects, I remember, I believe it was in the 2.2 edition of Twilight 2000, which is probably my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
They had what they called a GPS survey in the back. And apparently they had all these different ideas, natural disaster, armor, was it Armor 2050 or something like that?
Yeah, I remember that was an advertisement I saw once or twice.
Yeah. And so I think they had those ideas in mind, but I think events just overtook them. Plus the fact that by the time you're looking at the mid-90s, the timeline we had for Twilight 2000 was pretty well tattered by current events. I mean, it was just... So I was one of the guys who were going, make this an alternate history, and we're good.
Yes.
Make this an alternate history. We're good.
What that guy said, the guy with the bald head and the beard, that guy, it doesn't have to be future projection. It just is, this is what happened if it hadn't been for Gorbachev. If we hadn't wound it down, this is how it ends badly.
Actually, I think a more realistic, if you want to go that route, approach was actually Merck 2000, which was one of my very favorites.
Well, there's a couple of things that have turned up in Merck 2000 where I'm like, oh, yeah, that's kind of accurate, except for the whole fragmented China thing.
Have you been reading lately about Chinese economy?
Well, they're the last empire. I mean, the Russians have mostly
yes, but here's the deal.
Yeah.
It's only the coastal provinces that are wealthy, that are making money. You go into the interior, they're dirt poor, and they're not at all happy about it.
Yeah, well, just wait and just check out one of those maps that shows rising sea levels. All those guys living in the interior are going to be laughing out the other side of their faces when all those rich people on the coast are doing the dog paddle up the Yangtze River,
There is that.
The guys in Xinjiang will be just like, oh, yeah, you want to rent an apartment? That'll be 1 billion yuan. Thank you very much.
But no, the Merc 2000 stuff I thought was interesting because it really, in a way, almost forecasts the private security contractors of today.
Yeah. Yes.
And
it was a little ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah, and I thought that because, to be quite honest, when people, I always, in terms of war and stuff like that, World War II was, in my opinion, the last truly industrialized war that we may see.
Yeah.
Because you won't see another war like that.
Well, do you think you're going to see wars where a war where an entire nation pits its entire industrial, social output into a war? There could still be small countries.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a regional war. Did Serbia put 100% into the Balkans? Even though it.
But what I'm saying is you're not going to see things where you have two American army groups driving up through southern France, where you're not going to see battles like Prokhorovka.
No.
Or Kursk. You're not going to see that anymore. Although, by the way, the Russian Western Plains out there is great tank country.
Yeah, I was very pleased to see that speaking of American troops in Poland, and we'll get to that in a minute as far as Twilight 2000 goes, but I was very pleased to see that NATO has apparently pushed forward a plan to start rebasing all those depots full of gear.
Yep.
That used to be in Germany. They're moving them out of Germany and putting them in Poland. And the Poles are like, thank you. I mean, it's about time. They don't want to be a speed bump for the Russians, and it's still a possibility. Just ask the Ukrainians, just ask the Georgians. So basing that stuff forward, good move, NATO. It's about time. Was there anything that was a project that, you had the campaign for getting the RDF home. Would you have wanted? Were you pitching that to GDW as a?
I was starting to, but the Twilight 2000 started to kind of fold. One of the most popular ones that I was getting ready to pitch was something I called the Lions of Twilight.
Okay.
173rd Airborne Brigade in Kenya. And I was ready to do that because they're in Kenya at the behest of the Kenyan government. But guess who's footing the bill? The French. And this is shown by the fact that when they get new fatigue issue, it's the French lizard pattern, which is, of course, the standard gear of mercenaries the world over, sort of. It was the France's way of reminding them.
Who's paying the bills?
Who's paying the bills? Yes, you have all this equipment. Yes, you have all this stuff. But guess what? We're the people that are paying the bills. And I reconstituted the 173rd, which I understand, which has been reconstituted in real life. Mm-hmm. But I added a couple of interesting things. I added 509th Parachute Infantry Battalion. And
well, that was one of the things that you're right. That was one of the things I didn't realize that until you just said it. There, in Twilight 2000, as far as the Western powers go, there's a lot of units. When they wrote canon, they didn't really go beyond units that were in existence before the war. They didn't hypothesize units that would be created during the war, new formations.
Right. Well, one of them, the other battalion I came up with to put in the 173rd was 555th Parachute Infantry Battalion, the first all-black parachute battalion. They were formed in World War II, but they never saw combat. Instead, they pioneered this little-known technique called smoke jumping. They were the first smoke jumpers. Were African-American paratroopers from the 555th.
Did they do smoke jumping in the 40s or the 50s?
The 40s.
The 40s.
They wouldn't let them serve overseas. You got to remember, this was a white man, and a lot of the senior officers in the U.S. Army were white Southerners.
Yeah, well, we don't get integration until Korea.
Until President Truman said, "Hey, guess what, guys?"
Yeah.
But anyway.
So you were working on Lions of Twilight, which was a Kenyan-based campaign?
Yep.
Did back then, what was the, let me ask, because I'm curious, when I think Kenya, the guy who I always think of is, well, I mean, there's, Amin is all over with by the 2000s. Edie is retired and he's gone. But the main troublemaker as far back as the 80s is good old Joseph Kony and the crazy Lord's Resistance Army. My question is, was he involved in the story at all? Did you?
He was. Yeah, he was over in Uganda.
Mm-hmm.
Became a maximum warlord. Attracted the attention of the French and their American allies, who calmly proceeded to go across the border and stomp the living crap out of him.
Well, that's what happens when you line up in straight lines in front of a First World Army.
Yeah, that's generally what happens too when you think that. Well, I'm God. I'm God's servant here on earth. I'm invincible. That lasts about as long as, until you happen to catch a few rounds from a .50 caliber. Then you're suddenly very invincible.
So Kony featured. Who was the main antagonists for the Kenyan scenario?
Oh God. Oh, PARA, P-A-R-A, Pan-African Revolutionary Army.
Okay, so something like a descendant of SWAPO or some of these other revolutionary groups, like from Angola.
Of course, at that time, very few of us realized the extent of Islamic fundamentalism. So, although I did actually have an outfit called Jonadullah, was one of the terrorist outfits, Soldiers of God.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was. I'll come back to the Islamist thing in a second, but I want to make sure we hit everybody else's questions. Let's see here.
Jared, you wanted to ask one?
Jared?
I had a couple of new questions come up, so I wanted to get those.
Fire off the new questions.
I wanted to get those fielded. One was just a quick question from Paul Smith. He wanted to know, Frank, what was the name of the scenario in the Middle East to recover the USSR stealth VTOL fighter?
Called Mig Mountain.
Mig Mountain. All right. Was that ever published? Because I don't know that I've ever seen it.
No. This is when I ran at our test group. That it was called Mig Mountain. In fact, it was inspired by, I believe it was a tester's plastic kit of something like the MiG-37 Ferret stealth fighter. Fighter.
Oh, some hypothetical artist drawings airplane model?
Yeah.
Okay.
But God, that was fun. Got another one, Jared?
Yep, we got another one here. This one, and we got a bunch of questions for him, and Scott will get those.
I'll get back to him. Let's hear about the
No, it's from Matt Weiser, who asked several questions, and apparently he thinks Fallout is crap. By the way,
that's
again, possibly another communist child molester.
He must be, he asked us to stop talking about Fallout and get on to Twilight 2000. and again, like I always tell everybody, you know what? Tough shit. We're going to talk about what we're going to talk about, but now we're talking about, we got to it.
It's going to be tough to hate Matt because he clearly loves Twilight 2000, which puts
I'm not saying that.
Puts him on the side of the angels, but then he hates Fallout, which puts him on the side of Satan. So I'm not sure where Matt falls in there.
We'll forgive him for this one indiscretion. We'll give him some leeway here. But he did ask a new question, which was when we started the show. Was Matt asked the naval war? Many of the Twilight 2000 boards have not bought the wholesale eradication of the U.S. Navy and other navies. There would have been a lot more surviving naval assets, submarines especially, and maybe even 2 or 3 CVNs. Having more SSNs and missile subs surviving and at sea is a lot more realistic. Would you change that if you would you change that if you had a chance?
I think so, because if you look at the RDF sourcebook, for example, they've got a hell of a fleet right there in the Persian Gulf. There are survivors.
a fleet, a place that's not conducive to the survival of surface ships.
Yeah. Now the thing is, when they went after them, at least in our initial one in the 1980s. Remember, I used to play Harpoon.
Mm-hmm.
And
so did Annapolis. I understand Harpoon made it to Annapolis as
but the thing about it is, no ship was invulnerable. As a matter of fact, you looked at a lot of those weapons. You go through the Harpoon data annex. Those are, you got a lot of ship killer weapons. And remember, in Twilight 2000, the war started. We were projecting technology from the 1980s. And we're like, what kind of defense systems have you got? And I can sit there and I can say, from a little 2-bit destroyer, go with eight Harpoon missiles, fire, and you salvo 8 Harpoon missiles at the Soviets. I think, though, that there would be some fleet, some remnants. It's just that Twilight 2000 was essentially a land. If you will, land-based. It was land-based. Hell, I could see us. Well, there was the last submarine.
Great campaign, but the sub essentially is just like a chariot that takes the players to different places to have adventures.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. I imagine, though, you could do a really good The Last Ship style scenario, which is a good, by the way, guys, good series, action adventure. It's got a little whiff of the BS, but that's okay. We can deal with this.
I was going to say that not every ship needs to be sunk to be out of action, and that some of it may just be a matter of
maintenance.
Badly mangled ships going back to their harbors and going, oh look, Norfolk is nuked, Murmansk is nuked, and they never are able to repair them sufficiently to get them into battle. And then
not just repairs, but just regular maintenance, inventory of supplies. Once all that, unless you got a way to restock and resupply, it basically just becomes a big floating hotel that you just pull up to the dock.
Yeah.
Plus, with the nukes, you have this thing of with the nuke boats. You also have this idea. You also have this thing where you have to change out the reactor cores.
Was it like every 6 or 7 years, something like that?
Yeah. Now, in mine, for Twilight 2, the RDF search book, the ship the sub that was there, which I think was the USS Jacksonville, had just had its core swapped out, so it was good to go. But a lot of the U.S. and Russian nuke fleet are going to be suffering from reactor. They need maintenance. They need this. They need that. And I'll give you an example. When you talk about damaged ships, study how badly the German ships at Jutland were beat up. They cruised home, but it took them a year, at least, before some of those battleships and battlecruisers could get back into action. They were that badly damaged.
Yeah, and Kiel had not suffered an air burst of 1.5 megatons.
You're right, yeah. So, now, if you want to go ahead and do something, and I say this to Matt, that would be fine. But I'd also like to caution that, when you really think about it, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier is an awfully inviting target.
In a world that's running out of juicy targets.
Yeah, not only that, but what happens when you run out of aviation fuel? What do you do then?
Then it's just a big sun deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you're out of aviation gas, that's good. What do you do with your aircraft carrier? Oops. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good one. What else you got, Mr. Wallace?
No, that's the 2 questions I had, and again, Colin made a comment because we're talking about naval ships. Was capital ships? I'm not familiar with that term. Capital ships.
That's like a full-size battleship like the Iowa.
Oh, okay. He said that capital ships surviving Soviet naval cruise missiles in the 80s is not believable unless they hit. Do you think that's true? True statement or not?
You mean that they were incapable of surviving a hit from Soviet aviation, or
Depends on which ones you're talking about, because we actually ran a simulation where the Soviet battlecruiser Kirov wound up taking on the USS Missouri off the coast of Alaska.
That's bad news for the Kirov. That thing was from the 50s or something? It was not, I mean...
The Missouri was World War II.
Yeah, but updated.
9 16-inch guns. No waiting. The Missouri hurled out a salvo of 9 16-inch shells, 6 of which hit the Kirov. That was the end of the Kirov. That was it. Because one of them landed right in that forward missile, where all the forward missile silos are.
Yeah, Soviet submarine assets plus Soviet, naval aviation assets, all those backfires loaded up. Yeah, that would not do capital ships any favors.
Well, let me give you an example from the real world. One of the biggest fears during the Falklands War the Argentinians had was from that cruiser.
Yeah.
Or rather, the British had was from that cruiser, because none of their damn missiles could penetrate that armor. Even
the Belgrano?
The Belgrano, yeah. Because that was an old Brooklyn-class American light cruiser, but that damn thing was heavily armored by today's standards.
Oh, it was the Phoenix. It was the Lucky Phoenix.
Whatever they called it, but it was a Brooklyn-class light cruiser.
Well, I mean, it was the Lucky Phoenix. It was one of those ships that, got underway at Pearl Harbor and didn't get hit by the Japanese.
Something like that, yeah. But it also, too, just the weight of broadsides carried.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a ship that carried, holy crap, I think something like 15 6-inch guns, a single broadside. Now imagine that tearing into one of those British frigates, which are basically lightly, it's aluminum.
It's the aluminum hull, yeah.
So,
didn't the British already make that mistake at Jutland with the lightly armored ships that were going to...
Something's wrong with our bloody ships today.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay.
I'm gonna move on to Alf Bergenson's question. It's Raelius from the forum, Julin, the Twilight forum.
I think I've seen some of his stuff.
Yep. Raelius, or Alf, writes, were there some materials that you and the other Twilight 2000 writers and developers were working on when the decision was made to end the line? Are there any unpublished materials out there? Well, certainly Mig Mountain sounds great, and Lions of Twilight. And is there any chance that it will be made available to the small, passionate Twilight 2000 community? For instance, Frank, would you ever consider posting Mig Mountain to that website, to the Twilight 2000 forum, or to the Facebook page, just as a file?
I might just do that. There's obviously interest in it. Now, one of the things I used for the adventure was, I believe it was, which Keith? There was the Keith brother that passed away. I want to say William H. Keith. They did a series of booklets for Traveler, like the underwater environment, the mountain environment. I used the mountain environment, and part of that adventure was just getting your ass up that mountain.
Yeah. I was going to say, as far as unpublished stuff goes, I ended up getting a hold of a bunch of material from Tom Mulkey, who was also a Tampa Bay resident. And Mulkey had stuff for The Last University, which was about a cantonment built around University of Florida in Gainesville. And he had something called Warriors of the Everglades that he was working on, that was going to be about the cantonment around Miami and the Seminole Indian Nation down there. And also, he had material for Key West, for the Naval Air Station.
Yeah.
In the Keys.
Yeah, well. I know. I was good friends with Tom.
Yep. Another person who's unfortunately passed on.
Yeah, he's been gone a while. He, as a matter of fact, I was the one that got him interested in writing for Twilight. So
good. Good. He produced really good stuff. His material on
that.
His New America stuff was great. Made New America look interesting and different. Which there's a New America question in here somewhere. Let me see what else. Jared, do you have another write-in question?
No, that's all I got for now.
All right. Okay. So there is another question here about orders of battle and things like that. It's also from Alf. It's sort of related to the first question about where you did your research. And his question is, how did game designers and module writers research things about stuff on the other side of the Iron Curtain? Like, was there material available through those military publishers that helped you get a grip on foreign armies and foreign orders of battle and foreign capacities?
Yeah, there was. There are a number of things. Believe it or not, the old SPI publication, Strategy and Tactics, had some great stuff in there about things like the French army, this army and that army. If you dug deep enough in different publications, you could find things. Now, how accurate it was, you paid your money, you took your chances, especially with the Warsaw Pact stuff.
One thing that shows up in Warsaw Pact stuff that I thought was hilarious, that I like a piece of Twilight archaeology, was one of the things they mention is that there's during the invasion of Alaska, there's a Soviet paratrooper unit used to seize parts of Alaska. And I think it's described as the 6th Guards Air Assault Division, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
And they're supposedly stationed in the Far East, in the Far East Soviet Theater of War.
Yep, Far Eastern Military District.
Yeah, TVD. And apparently, after the Soviet Union fell, it turned out that the people who did their research and discovered that the Russians had listed in their orders of battle a Guards Air Assault Division, that it only existed on paper. That it was a mythical. I mean, of course, the Russians let you know it existed. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
It was part of Soviet disinformation.
Yeah, that's sometimes what I use as well. I have a complete order of battle for the U.S. 9th Airborne Division from World War II.
Yeah.
Which never existed. It was actually a Phantom Division. 17th Armored Division. I like playing around with that because you can do interesting stuff with that. But besides, they actually have a divisional patch, by the way, for the 9th Airborne. It's great. It's really a cool-looking patch, too.
Oh,
Google
even better.
sometime.
What do you got, Jared?
What? No, I'm saying let's move on to the next question. I have a couple, but let's get some of the pre-submitted ones out of the way.
Matt Weiser is back with another question. Jason Weiser. Jason?
Yeah.
Jason Weiser. All right, not Matt. Jason Weiser.
And they're no relation from what I think.
Yeah. Frank, is there anything you wish you had been covered in greater detail in the Twilight 2000 line? Is there anywhere you thought that deserved an adventure source book treatment and just didn't get it?
Oh, God. All right, first of all, let me just answer this, because I know there's reading the questions that you were kind enough to send me. The one thing I would really like to, if I could add anything and put into Twilight 2000, sanity.
Yes. Yeah.
Sanity.
Mental hit points.
Yeah, as a Vietnam veteran who has suffered from PTSD, I still do to a degree. It's not so bad now, but there were times, there's something that I learned, and I learned about myself, to be quite honest with you. I had it all planned out. I was going to spend 3 years as an enlisted man, including the tour in Nam, get out, go to college on the GI Bill, go through ROTC, and go back in as an officer. By the time my 12 months in Nam were up, I'd had enough. I just couldn't do it anymore. I can't do this. You reach a wall. You saw it in Band of Brothers. Lieutenant Compton. I think it was during the Battle of Haga. He just drops his helmet in the snow. That's it. You see suddenly the eyes he's reached it. He's reached that point. And the worst part about it happening in the world of Twilight 2000 is there's no real facilities for you to go to rest up and to get back to normal. But there should be some sort of mechanic in there, like sanity points in Call of Cthulhu. Now, you're going to have people that seem to be able to take it, you know, that can deal with it. You have others that it'll just hit them. And it hits you in all kinds of ways. For example, I read History of the Franco-Prussian War in 1871. And one of the things was the Bavarian troops were so insanely frightened of what was going to happen in battle. You had a number of them that would actually stop by the side of the road, stick their rifle under their chins, and kill themselves rather than go into battle. They were already broken.
Mm-hmm. There's a number of things in the second edition, the 2.2 edition, where they've got these lists of NPCs, and they mention things like the exhausted veteran, and the inexperienced militiaman, and the writers are obviously, thinking about. In fact, there was I want to say there's a character who's like a SEAL in the last. There's a SEAL team guy who's in Norway who's part of the last submarine thing where, it's just written into the character description. At some point, he will break. Right when in the middle of some shit, he's going to hit that wall after you've been relying on him, and he's been doing everything right. He's going to break, and it's just part of the plot. The game master was in charge of deciding when that happened, whenever it was dramatic. But there was never any kind of mechanic, so they were thinking about it.
Yeah, I think one of the most dramatic portrayals that I've seen of it, and probably one of the most accurate, there was a movie that was actually made during World War II called A Walk in the Sun.
Oh, great film.
Yeah.
One of the best World War II movies ever made.
Yeah. Lloyd Bridges' character, who was one of the senior sergeants, all of a sudden he breaks, and he's face down crying like a baby. And, the funny thing is, the guys walk past him, and they're all kind of like, well, he's had too much, and they were very sympathetic. And we always were. You look at Buck Compton, guys are coming to visit him.
Yeah.
Because you know that someday that's going to be you. It's not a matter of it might happen. It's only a matter of when's it going to happen. When are you going to hit that wall?
It's when the gunny breaks in the Pacific.
Yeah.
And I guess is it Peleliu or Guadalcanal? I guess it's Peleliu.
Yeah, Peleliu.
Peleliu, where he's the hardest thing. He's as hard as a coffin nail, and all his shit is completely wired together, and nothing's going to go wrong. And the switch from everything's fine to everything's not. There's no warning. There's no signs of it's suddenly he's out of gas.
Yeah.
And it was really shocking where it's like all the newbies are like, oh my God, if that guy can reach the end of his rope, then there's no chance for the rest of us. We'll all reach our end of our ropes.
Of course you will. That's the first. Yeah. That's one of the things you realize. But it's just a matter of when. One of the more interesting and certainly one of the more tragic answers I ever got was from one of my fellow Vietnam vets. We were talking about religion, and I said, when did you become an atheist? He said, when did you start when did you stop believing in God? His answer was, when I saw my first dead kid.
And it's funny because that's the same situation can produce a faith in God.
Yeah.
Whatever mechanisms you have to cope. And, I agree with you that something charting either morale or mental health or both would have been an interesting mechanic in a game like that. The next question they have here, or next part of that question was there anywhere that you thought deserved a source book that you really wish had gotten one?
Kenya,
all right, because it was yours, obviously.
Yeah, it was mine, obviously. I like the idea. I do wish that we had seen a few more European source books. I mean, we had the Central European source book that came out later, but one of the biggest complaints that I heard was that it's all about Americans. You're fighting a war in Europe, but it's all about Americans.
Well, we apologize for being Americans who published it, but when we wrote, and then we wrote things about England and got it wrong. And sadly,
yeah.
the UK sourcebook is filled with embarrassing mistakes. So maybe it's best if we just stick to what we know.
Either that, or see if we can get some people, you know, who live in England who are fans of the game. Write the sourcebook. I would have much more faith in one written by the English.
Jason's second question is, what can you tell us about the inspiration for New America? Did you ever? Your scenarios never dealt with New America. Your published scenarios never dealt with New America. But did you have any contact with the guys who were developing the New America?
The guy that developed the New America plotline, I think, was Lauren Wiseman.
Okay.
Up at GDW. They really wanted this. New America is kind of an odd, today when you look at the hate groups of today, the militia groups and such, and well, that's not New America. Well, it is and it isn't. New America was a very sophisticated operation. Hell, today New America is known as the Tea Party, isn't it? Yeah.
Hey now, you think you've just pissed off at least 1/3 of our audience.
Probably. But no, really.
But they couldn't operate today. An organization that actual pyramidal organized they get sniffed out and found like that,
Yeah, and see, that's just New America. We're supposed to be the bad guys. You'd be surprised at the number of T2K players that were kind of sympathetic to them.
Yeah, no matter how weird they made them. They seem to have a lot they reminded me that maybe they drew some inspiration from David Brin's Holonists, although I'm not quite sure which was published first. Because Twilight 2000 is what, 84?
Yep.
So that may be in front of David Brin's Postman stuff. But they mentioned things like the Covenant and Sword and Arm of the Lord.
Oh, Jesus.
They mentioned groups like Posse Comatas and things like that. The thing that always struck me about New America is that if I was writing it for today, I would make New America the puppet master behind these groups. Because so many of these groups have goals that are contrary to each other and they can't really cooperate. But if they're all being manipulated behind the scenes by a fifth column of American fascism, so they can talk religious talk to the people who are religiously motivated, and they can talk racial talk to the groups that are racially motivated.
Actually, if you really want to take a look, check out the Dominionist movement.
Yeah. Yes, they'd be the kind of group that would.
There's New America. There's New America. Yeah. Well financed, well organized,
and not secret. That's the thing that kills me about New America. Oh, it's underground, but in real life they'd have a website. They'd have
yes.
Yeah, they'd have lobbyists.
They would. I've been to like Aryan Nation's website. I do a lot of oppositional research, just to find out exactly what those douchebags are up to these days, especially the kind of lies they tell and the kind of propaganda they put out.
Yeah.
And New America was like that. They were very slick. The thing is, of course, they had, what was his name? Carl Hughes.
That's our not our new Fuhrer, but our new prophet, our new, founding father.
Yeah, well,
whatever. New founding father. I was always very sorry that the scenario about kidnapping Carl Hughes from his underground bunker.
Yeah.
Didn't include character stats for Carl Hughes. I mean, it was like he's just assumed to be baggage, and I was just thinking that if you got a scenario where the whole point is to kidnap Carl Hughes and get him back to the authorities while his goons are trying to find you and rescue, the leader, that his personality should be sort of critical to the scenario, especially if it turns out he's super charismatic.
Oh, yeah.
if it turns out that he's like, the best snake oil salesman in the world, the team that's bringing him back, at some point they start falling under his spell, or do one or two members start going, hey, this guy's talking a lot of sense, and then you have to shoot those guys.
I know, it's crazy. It's wild. But yeah, I mean, when they were taking Carl Hughes, I know at least a couple of groups that when they did that, he resisted. They shot his ass dead.
Yeah. Yes, this kidnapping, this arrest didn't, went the way that it went for bin Laden.
Yep. Hey, Osama, you want to come with us? No. Okay.
Hell, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Glad we could do it your way.
So one of the next question I got here is about the color plates in the vehicle guides. And I know that you did the NATO vehicle guide. Jason wanted to know if there was any real life or notional color schemes that inspired the illustrations, and whether or not, because you wrote up the descriptions for them, whether or not you had any input with creating some of the...
I didn't.
Okay.
I had zero input. Some of the color schemes in those color plates look like they were based on best guess estimates. They look pretty cool. Sometimes I think you do a lot of this, or some of this was done just because it looked good. And why not?
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, you're talking to a man that paints the 3-color ambush camouflage scheme on his German vehicles for World War II by hand.
So you like some pretty colors. Oh, in fact, there's my case full of miniatures.
Yes.
Right back there. We have the same disease. Kevin MP asks, and this is relatively might be not a conflict, but a controversy. What was your opinion of the 2013 Twilight 2013 game released by 93 Game Studio? Did you have a chance to look at it?
Yes, I have a PDF copy.
Okay.
My grandmother always said that if you can't see anything good about something, then don't say anything at all.
Is there anything good to say about the actual mechanics, if not the setting? Because my complaints are setting. I never got into mechanics enough to yell about it. And
the mechanics, I didn't care for them. I think other people might. For me, I didn't like Twilight 2000 First Edition mechanics.
Welcome to the club.
So it's only when they hit 2 and 2.2, or rather 2.1 and 2.2, especially 2.2, they actually got somewhere.
Yeah. Agreed.
But as far as that goes, I mean, obviously they put a lot of work into it. Jared, you wanted to...
Oh, no, I was just going to say, Scott, you don't want to start another edition wars?
No, we don't, really.
Oh, okay.
We really don't.
As far as, I mean, to me, ultimately, though, if Twilight 2013, if you like it and you run it and your players have a good time playing it, then it's fine. It works.
That is the end of the equation.
Yeah, that's my ultimate answer.
And kudos for them for taking the initiative and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll give them that.
We're down to our last 4 questions here.
I have a couple. Once you get through those 4, I have a couple more for you.
All right. Jess Gulbranson asks, what would you change about what you've written if you had a chance to rewrite it today looking back? And I think you mentioned the Islamic fundamentalism was not on our radar.
Yeah, I would change that. You'd see a lot more of it. You'd see a lot more of it. And as I said before, the funny thing is, Iran. I used to wince when I would reread the RDF source book, going, whatever was I thinking, but I was going on the information we had at the time. Looking at Iran now, that may not be that far-fetched. Except I happen to believe that you're no longer going to see an American expeditionary force going anywhere.
Yeah.
Not of that size, not of that magnitude. But changing, I don't know. I probably changed New America. I changed New America, and that would be about it.
How would you change it? Would you make it a public institution rather than a private? I mean, known. Like it would have a website. It would have
it'd have its own website. It'd have rallies. It would have all kinds of things.
Oh, it could be the New American Third Party.
Yeah, New America Third Party.
So it's not the Republicans and the Democrats. It's New America.
Yeah, it could be its own. You have all of this percolating out there. I think that would be even cooler. That would work even better.
That almost sounds like the a little bit like the governmental organization in that what the hell is that movie series? There was two of them out there. It was they just came out with the second one within the last year. The one where they have the 24 hours of violence.
The Purge.
Yeah.
The Purge. What you're describing, like the website, the other party, almost sounds a little bit like this New America that you're talking about.
Well, they keep calling them the New Founding Fathers.
The New Founding Fathers, yeah.
I'll admit, I couldn't get to the first Purge. There's a point in the movie where I went, I don't care about anybody in this movie. I'm bored. And I stopped watching, so I have no idea if the second one's any good.
But no, I mean that's what I would. Not only that, but you may even see something. If I would have put in there, I'd have put in something like, let's say, Victorious Truth Ministries. New America goes religious.
Yes, and therefore tax-free.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have it headquartered down here in Florida.
Our own version of the Taliban.
Not only that, but dude, when you could get a preacher like Creflo Dollar, who gets $65 million to get a new freaking jet, come on, man.
Yeah. And did he make it? Because I remember he was asking for the money. Did he actually get it?
I'm not sure. I think they really kind of closed that up because it was embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, what the hell? Peter Popoff came back. One of the great fake faith healers that got done in by James Randi in the 70s. 20 years later, everybody forgot he's back to doing the same old nonsense. And here's the thing. In a medieval America where you've lost TV and radio and all that kind of stuff, religion would have been a really interesting way to motivate people in the Twilight 2000 world. Whether it's faith healing or miracles, which would have that supernatural aspect, except, at the end you can pull the mask off and it's really Mr. Jenkins, the caretaker for the abandoned amusement park or whatever Scooby-Doo does. But the idea of working religion in, but it was always a thorny subject.
Yes, it is. It's a thorny subject in most RPGs anyway.
Yeah. It's a thorny subject in real life as well.
Yes, oh yeah. Yeah.
So Lee Hanna asks, or says, the Black Madonna and other Polish modules won me a lifetime interest in Polish history. What got you to do that research and to add the icon, the Black Madonna, into the game? What was it that inspired that?
My friend Stephanie Robbins.
Okay.
She was, and I want to give her full and due credit if Steph's watching this, that she had mentioned, because I said, okay, what can they be looking for? And she said, oh, haven't you ever heard of the Black Madonna of Czestochowa?
Well, it's a great name, first of all. It's the Black Madonna?
Yeah, but you know where it got the name from.
No, I don't remember from the scenario.
It's called the Black Madonna because the painting itself is very stained and old.
Okay.
And besides, it did not originate in Poland. It actually originated in the Ukraine. And it was brought to Poland. And
so it's foreign loot? It's actually looted from the Ukraine?
No, it was not foreign loot. It was a gift.
Oh, okay. It
was a gift from the Prince of I believe from the Prince of Opole.
Okay.
But I'm very glad to hear that this guy is, because Polish, history is fascinating. Poland has a very fascinating history. And,
not to mention, Jan Sobieski does not get enough credit for saving Western Europe.
Jan Sobieski does not. Yeah, Jan Sobieski saved Western Europe. He doesn't get enough credit, just like the Soviets don't get enough credit for winning World War II in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, there was when D-Day rolled around, somebody posted on my Facebook page, yeah, let's talk about D-Day, and let's talk about on the other side of the football field was this battle the Soviets and the Germans are having that makes D-Day look like a punch-up in a bar. It's just, the scale is insanely huge.
I believe it was Operation Bagration.
You got it.
The destruction of Army Group Center. But anyway, I did this research.
That's an SPI title, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it is. All right.
Yes, it is. But no, I mean, I got the idea. Bless her heart. She was also the one, because she was really getting into Soviet studies at the time. By the way, she now works for the U.S. government. She's currently in Tbilisi, Georgia. And by the way, some of her postings there from when they went out to help do flood relief work. Very, very, very interesting. But Steph is a very savvy, she knows her stuff. She's a tremendous scholar. She also started me on Spetsnaz.
Ah, everybody's favorite Cold War baddies.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're definitely they are the worthy fucking adversaries for the players.
They are.
When it comes time to sick a bunch of guys on the players in Twilight 2000, where man for man, they're a threat to player characters, yes, those are the guys.
Yep. Oh yeah,
and your Spetsnaz that you created for the Black Madonna, became the blueprint for everybody else's Spetsnaz, afterwards. Frankly, right down to the part where they, a couple of authors took your abbreviation for Special Signals Detachment, and thought that was a Spetsnaz designation and not their cover. Where they'd write up another Spetsnaz unit as SSD-27, and I'm like, oh my God, you didn't even read what Frank wrote, did you? Oh well.
Special chest, but see, that's what I believe mine was SSD-109.
Yeah.
They had but that was their cover. And one of the most fascinating, which, how long the Spetsnaz has been around?
I did some research on this a while back, and there's sort of deception troops from World War II, but they're not quite Spetsnaz.
We're talking World War or post World War I, Spanish Civil War.
Okay.
And
that I did not know.
Oh yeah, but anyway, no. So that's what got me into it, and I thought, well, here we've got this wonderful, mythical, icon, the Black Madonna. Now, wow, this sounds like an Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones and the Black Madonna.
It's such a great. It's like a four-way fight. I mean, there's so many cool interested parties. There's your Cold War standard antagonist with the Spetsnaz guys. There's the Margraf of Silesia, who's one of the most lasting characters you've ever created. That guy made perfect sense for his time and place. He was, he's not a good guy, but he's not necessarily your enemy. But he's the guy who's being a realistic warlord. And then there's the father and the peasants organization. Who do you hand this thing off to? The number of options in that scenario were all very believable, and very. And tested the players, not just their practicality, but their moral compass.
Yeah, and that's part of what it was. And I said I really enjoyed that. Of course, you also, too, I think, had one of the most interesting characters I think I created, and that's Captain Molly Warren.
Yep. Molly shows up being almost like, she's there to shock the players.
Yep, because she never met a Russian she didn't shoot.
Yeah,
or hang.
And that always shocks my players, where they're like, "Thank goodness, guys wearing American uniforms. They speak. Oh, they're from America. It's great." And then they act like they are sort of. I hate to say it, but I want to say they act like Europeans because they're completely invested in all of the old hates. You know what I mean? Americans hold themselves separate from the hates in Europe.
Yep.
But these people have been there long enough that they are now invested in the local area, and they've adopted those attitudes.
Oh, yeah, no, she was a very girlfriend of mine at the time who was a feminist, believe it, actually one of the really cool feminists. It still is, by the way. She said she understood exactly, in a way, what Molly Warren was about. If you've ever seen, and Jared, I think you might have seen this, a movie called I Spit on Your Grave.
I didn't see it, but I know all the gory.
It's infamous. It is an infamous movie.
Yeah.
And,
but when you look at
revenge.
when you look at what she does, she goes out to reclaim herself. It's what she's doing. Well, that's what Molly is doing, one Russian at a time. And her favorite phrase is, I don't really know who it was that raped me. I didn't get a good look at him, but I figure if I kill enough of these bastards, the law of averages is going to be on my side eventually.
Certainly, Joe Bob Briggs cited "I Spit on Your Grave" as his favorite feminist movie, and I see his point.
Yeah,
I have not seen it yet.
I've seen it, and trust me, I was ready to throw up after about the first 45 minutes when you see what was done to her.
Yeah, my question about it is, just to get off, we'll get back on target, but one of the things that was deeply disturbing about reading about Spit on Your Grave is that one of the perpetrators of the rape is mentally retarded, and it's kind of like bullied into doing it. He's kind of bullied into doing it by the other horrible guys, and that does not save him.
Nope.
No, he is not saved by pleading special circumstances. I only have an IQ of 60, and the other guys, pushed me into doing it. That doesn't help, and that's really creepy about the film. In that revenge doesn't give a shit about your excuses.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I remember when they first ran into Captain Molly, and she had like 5 Russians with nooses around their necks, standing on the back of one of her Lab 25s, or I think it was a Lab 25. And they go, "What are you doing?" "I'll be right with you in a minute." "Drive." Puts it in gear. She hangs off. And she says, "Just taking out the trash."
Well, my players are like, "Oh, bandits. Yeah, bandits and deserters. Yeah, that's what you do." And he's like, "No, they weren't bandits." "What?" "No, they were just, they were from local motorized rifle division." It's like, and my players had killed deserters and thieves and marauders all the time. But they did have, some kind of Marquis of Queensberry rules when it came to anyone but the Zampolites or the KGB.
Yep.
They were like, you don't want to be here either. But when it came to the Zampolites of the KGB or guys who had just gone marauder, but to have her do that where and it was the hanging that got it. It was actually, they were actually more creeped out by the hangings than they were by somebody getting shot, because I guess the feeling that a firing squad would be like more military and a hanging is like criminal,
Yeah.
But let's see here. Matt Weisser's got 2 questions, and these are the last 2. One is, how did you feel? It's a question about the Mexican invasion of the American Southwest.
Okay.
Because this is one of the things Twilight 2000 players love debating, is the Mexican invasion of the Southwest and the Soviet invasion of Alaska. Those are the 2 things they like to groan about as far as the logistics don't work, and they don't think. But he says, Mexican invasion, unrealistic or possible under the circumstances as presented in the game. What do you think?
First of all, the question would be why? Why are they coming north? My God, unless you happen to have a few of the generals down there that are, I can't remember, there's a political movement down there which wants to reclaim the American Southwest. And I can't remember what they're called, but they've been around for a very long time. They've been around since at least World War II. But overall, they'd be to me, in my opinion, they'd be too damn busy trying to put their own country back together.
Agreed.
I think what that really was put in there for was to stir up a little more excitement.
Because everybody likes a little Red Dawn with their Twilight 2000.
Well, that was just it. You know, you're looking for Red Dawn. Now, as far as the Soviet invasion of Alaska, let me give you, to answer Matt's question and to answer Jason's question.
The Alaskan one was just me throwing it in, but please ask it anyway. You answer it anyways.
Okay. Several of us went to see, I can't remember the movie, but we were all, it was Steffi was part of us. Stephanie Robbins was part of our little group. I'm trying to remember, but we saw the trailers for Red Dawn. And we're watching, you know, and you see the parachutes coming down, and each other going, okay, that's got to be Alaska. So we figured, our scenario said that's probably about a platoon of Soviet Spetsnaz, more likely Radoviki or Raiders, who are the equivalent of our U.S. Army, probably come down to blow up the pipeline. Okay, because that would make sense. Then we get there, they're landing in Colorado. What the? That was one of the all-time great WTF moments.
It's a little inland. There appears to have been a slight malfunction at NORAD.
And when they talk about the whole, you know, something about X amount of Army groups coming across the Bering Strait, and we're like, Jesus Christ, they couldn't supply 3 divisions out there. We know, we've read the logistics reports.
Yeah, there's nothing between Nome and Anchorage. There's no. I've looked. Looking at maps, I'm not seeing roads connecting the Seward Peninsula with the corridor that goes up and down between Fairbanks and Anchorage. You can't drive through it. It's just wilderness. It's howling wilderness.
Yeah, they wanted Red Dawn, and they got it. Yeah. And that's fine. That's fine.
And I admit, I want it too. And when I play Twilight 2000, I always tinker with the backstory so I can have my Red Dawn. Yeah. So I can have I want my Russians in Alaska. I want my Russians and my Mexican communists in Texas because it's more fun. That's it.
Actually, for me, it wouldn't be the communists. It would be the cartelistas.
Well, nowadays, that's another thing. We didn't ever imagine the power of the cartel. I mean, the cartels are important in Red Star, Lone Star. They're actually the main bad guys. But I don't think we really knew at the time how big the cartels were going to get and how once the narcotics go away, they really are positioned to become regional warlords. I mean, just because the drug industry goes away doesn't mean that they're not going to go, well, I guess we can just go ahead and be in charge. You know, I mean, Mexico would be in a civil war, you know, if you were rewriting Twilight 2000 for the
Oh, hell yes.
It's practically in a civil war now. But yeah, they wouldn't be coming over the border unless it's the cartels looking for resources or something. But that's a good one. The cartels would be like that's left out like the jihadists are left out.
Yeah. Okay.
Last question.
But it makes sense, you know, because it's real world shit, you know.
Yeah. Last question. Let's see here. Matt asks about Lions of Twilight. There was a talk about a he also asked. He's asking about things that were in the pipeline. Do you remember anything or know anything about the Korean source? If there was a Korean source book in the works, and if there was anything about like a Northwest source book, so it would be about America, maybe up the coastline to Alaska, sort of something to cover that. Was any hints of Korea or the Northwest?
I had heard there was a Korean source book.
Okay.
I had an RDF update in which most of the U.S. Army in Korea, which is, I think that's the 8th Army.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, pulls out and heads for the Persian Gulf.
It's closer to get to than crossing the Pacific.
And a lot less risky.
Yes, well, you don't, for one thing, you don't have to, well, depends. There's all those marvelous pirates down in the Sulu Sea and through the Straits of Malacca. I'm sure that's not going to be a problem.
On the other hand, would they be crazy enough to attack a convoy that's escorted by warships?
Well, it depends how escorted they are. It's that surface fleet that we were asked about later. How much of it is on the surface, and how much of it is perhaps under the surface.
There we go. But yeah, no, all I heard about was the Korean source book, and I believe Tom Mulkey was actually looking to work on that.
I think that's correct. Was the Korean source book, do you know anything about it? Because I always thought that a Korean source book, if there was one, would be about how do we get these guys out of Korea. You know,
that's all I really know of it. I think it was going to be called the Twilight and the Hermit Kingdom, and stuff like that. But that's all I really know. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Wallace, you got questions. Frank's got answers.
Yep, I got a few more questions, folks. And if you are listening, these are our last questions. So don't post any more. If you do post some more, we'll try to get them to Frank and get him to contact you directly, possibly. But as far as the show goes, these are the last three. So, but again, thank you everybody for posting questions during the show and pre-show. We do appreciate it because that really helped fuel this discussion that we're having this week. So, John had asked, do you think with the current change in the U.S.-Russian relationships, Twilight 2000 could gain new life?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think it could. To my carefully considered opinion, given what I have seen in Washington, especially coming from the White House, I don't think you're going to see massive commitments of American troops anymore. It's going to be asymmetrical warfare. It's going to be cyber warfare. But think about it. Somebody gains control of some of our national grids, they could shut down every power station in this country.
And they could easily do it. Because I watched a whole thing about that, and they talked about how they're in our systems now. All our infrastructure for electricity and water utilities are so vulnerable and open, and it's like they're in our systems, but we're also in their systems as well.
Yep.
So it's kind of like it's a Mexican standoff.
Mutually assured destruction.
Yep.
What Frank said.
We're going to mad, only now we're not doing it with nukes, we're doing it with viruses.
Yes, and not the fun kind that give you a runny nose and, spongiform encephalitis. It's the horrible kind of viruses that wipe out your iTunes account.
What?
No more Justin Bieber, huh?
No!
Well, that could be a good thing. Please, bring it on. Bring it on.
Bieb. I got one question for Frank when we're done, because that reminded me of something, the Bieber thing.
And that'll be the last thing. So a second question from John, again related to this, is: do you think that Twilight 2000 lost its fans when the Cold War officially ended in 1990?
No, I don't. But I think what happened is, in my opinion, the ending of the Cold War really kind of, I think, caught a lot of the Twilight crew, caught them out, because they're like, okay, now what do we do? Because I've always said that Twilight 2000 was the ultimate Reagan-era / Cold War RPG. And it really was. It's you're role-playing in a Tom Clancy techno-thriller. Is what you're doing. Well, look at what happened to the techno-thriller genre. When the Cold War ended, it really stumbled. A lot of the writers, a lot of the series, they're gone. And I don't know as if we lost fans. I think it was a combination. That's when I would have come out with alternate timeline. This is an alternate history. This is what could have happened. This is what could have happened. Oh, well, hell. Look at the incident with the Bitburg Eagles in 1983. That was for real.
You mean the radar contact thing?
Yeah, the whole 9 yards, where it was one Soviet officer who decided, no, I'm not going to launch.
Yeah.
That basically saved us all from living in caves and squatting in our own poop. Okay.
Yeah. Our radioactive poop.
Yes, but no, to really make it clear, I think it was a combination of both. It lost interest because the Cold War was over. I don't think we responded as effectively as we could have.
Do you think it required several years to go by before anyone would suddenly go back to it with a sense of nostalgia? Because when the Cold War is unraveling, and East Europe and the Soviet Union are unraveling, I get why there's sort of a what's the point. But a few years go by, and people start to look back on that age that was with a different perspective. The trick is, how do you preserve the IP during the slump period before there's renewed interest?
Yeah, that was one of the problems. And unfortunately, GDW went under, I think, 96?
Wasn't terribly much longer. I don't think they survived 95, but
yeah, and they went under, and suddenly it's gone now. It's vaped out. I kind of miss it. I kind of miss those good old days when you woke up and you knew the evil commies were hiding under your bed. You had a sense of purpose.
At least we knew where they were, and we knew we could count on them.
Yes. Yeah.
And we knew what they looked like. They were strong and broad with big fur hats, and we knew what they looked like.
And we knew where they lived, and we knew where they kept all their stuff. So it was very easy to have a nice, comfortable standoff with guys when you knew where all their stuff was. Our current batch of villains don't seem to want to have any stuff. They seem to have mud huts and machetes.
Listen, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
All right, the last question I have from looks like I think William Bargo asked another question. He goes, oh, by the way, he says he does like the idea of a Twilight 2000 Call of Cthulhu BRP combo. He says, the question is, did you ever catch any flack from the government for your looking into military technical data? Because I caught some for having some of your books in our barracks back in 1987.
Wow. I'm actually flattered. I hope to God you didn't get in a lot of trouble. But here's an interesting thing. 2 incidents to answer William's question. One, I think when I was in Vietnam, and I had said something about the Katyusha rocket systems, this, that, and the other. And I was like, I think it was a Spec 4 or something like that. And they said, and this 1 second thing goes, why, that's confidential. That's classified information. Where did you learn that? And I said, sir, the Big Golden Book of World War II, Southeast Public Library. I looked it up. And he was like, you mean they let civilians? Yeah, and I'm like, this was history. This was available. The other one was when I used to play a lot of Air Power, Air Superiority. It's an air combat game. The guy that designed it's was a former Navy pilot, J.D. Webster. And it was designed with all the latest information from aviation and space tech, weekly. We used to call it Aviation and Space League. But we went down to we used to game down to MacDill Air Force Base, and we went down there one time. And my friend Jim Cupper and I were in that Burger King down there, and we're talking about our pseudo mission. We're talking about our Su-25s because we were flying Warpack that night. We're going through all the different, and these 2 guys behind us are going, excuse us, but where did you learn all that? And I turned on, I realized these guys were in flight suits and both had the red flag emblem on.
Oh, so they were playing Op4.
Yeah, they were doing the Op4. And they said, where did you get it? And I told them, I said, this is in a game. This is in a game. And I said, this, that, and the other. And both of them just kind of looked at me. And actually, the reaction I thought was very cool. They're going, good. I'm glad to see civilians learning about this stuff. Because basically it was like, help you make political decisions.
I was doing some research for a Twilight 2000 game, and I asked a guy who was in the Navy Reserve a question about some Navy system. I don't remember what it was. It might have been the Mark 48 torpedo. I don't know. But I asked him some specific questions about it because I was trying to figure out, like, the players have to strip something out and carry it. How do you transport one of these? You know, how do you move the torpedoes? Or a special vehicle? Do you need a tractor trailer? Can you dismantle it? You know, things like that. So I'm asking very specific questions, and he didn't really answer me. And then, like a day later, he comes back and he says, "Listen, I need to know why you want to know, because when people ask us questions like that, we're supposed to contact the Office of Naval Intelligence or the or whatever the counterintelligence version is. I guess O&I is intelligence, but there's another one which I can't remember the anagram for. But we're supposed to contact them and tell them that somebody's asking about the Westman system. And I had to explain it's Twilight 2000. It's a game. It's, and he's like, oh, okay. So he wasn't too upset, and I didn't get a visit from the government. But here's the really weird thing. When I was living in New Orleans, I was trying to write some Twilight 2000 material in the late 80s. And I wanted to set something in New Orleans. So I called up the Superdome and asked, hey, do you guys have like a blueprint or a map of the Superdome I could get? And because it's not 9/11, they sent me this map, this very, very detailed map of the Superdome. And this is just one of, there's multiple levels to the map showing each layer of the Superdome. Then there's
holy cow!
And it goes on and on. I think there's 3 or 4 of these for the laying out all 3 of these maps, incredibly detailed. All the exits, shows all the rooms, all the corridors, all the bathrooms. And I just thought, and they just sent it right to me for free. Was this diagram of the Superdome? And all I can think is, there's no way. There's no way I would get the diagrams of the Superdome if I had called up the Superdome and said, "Can you send? Got any?" They would have said, "Sure. What's your phone number and address?" and sent that right to the FBI.
Oh yeah.
Glancy, that's an Irish name. He sounds like one of those IRA terrorists, But yeah, this is one of my favorite treasures because even though I never got to use it for a publication, I keep it around just because it's hilarious that no one would ever do this again.
Oh no! And did you actually do anything with it, Scott? Did you make a?
Yeah, I did. I actually wrote a couple of scenarios set in New Orleans, and I had the New Americans camped out in the Superdome, not unlike everyone camped out in the Superdome during Katrina. It was very odd seeing all those people in Katrina and that weird little citadel around the Superdome, and that's what I had built for the scenario, was a New American outpost in the ruins of New Orleans. But yeah, I submitted it to Lauren Weissman, and he said, "That's nice, kid. Call us back when you got a real scenario." I didn't get published, obviously, but I got better reception from that than I did from. You remember the Twilight 2000 article about Hot Cuisine 2000, which was the article on the MRE? I tried to send in an article on cannibalism, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not publishing this."
Yeah, but yet one of the T2000 modules that was not published in-house by GDW, I forget who it was that published it, dealt exactly with that. That was at the climax of the adventure.
Oh no, it was Rifle River. It did turn up in Challenge.
Okay, yeah. Well, there was another one too where they're mucking around Los Angeles and they're trying to find their lieutenant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that one. And I'm like, okay.
Yep, there's cannibals in that one too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd gotten fascinated by it because I read Larry Niven and Purnell's, Lucifer's Hammer, and so I wanted to write something up, sort of compiling cannibalism and fiction into sort of an article for it. And they were like, "No, we're not. It's moms might see this, so we're not publishing it. Go away. Try those creeps over at Chaosium. They like gross stuff." So that's
Scott, you said you had one more thing for him, or we're good?
The last question would be, have you ever put live human a historical figure into a Twilight 2000 game, where you dropped a celebrity or a real-life political or military leader, and dropped it on your players just so they could go, holy shit, it's whoever, it's what, like, it's Bieber, get him.
You're famous.
Yeah, like, yeah. If it was Bieber, they all just opened fire. It's Bieber, get him.
No, I can't think of any. I used to do that in Space 1889. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, you've got to have Mark Twain turn up, and you've got to have Otto von Bismarck, and yes, everybody, yes.
Oh, yeah, I did a whole adventure campaign, Teddy Roosevelt on Mars.
Yes, please. I'll have some of that, please.
But anyway.
All right, so those were, we had a lot of questions, a lot of good questions from our customers, our fans. Again, work slipping in there. So yes, we had a lot of good questions, a lot of good discussion. I hope everybody got their questions answered satisfactory. Hopefully everybody liked the answers that they heard. So thank you, Frank, for joining us again.
Well, you're quite welcome.
And doing this Q&A this time from the fans. Because I think last time we more just like discussed the game and asked you questions. This way, like I said, this time we wanted to hear what do the fans want to hear. So we are.
There were plenty of fans who were very frustrated that we didn't get to the topic they wanted to get to.
Yeah, so we tried to do that this time, and I think we got everybody's questions answered. So we again thank you very much for being on. We appreciate
it. Welcome. And if I might have a minute or so here, I'd like to thank all the fans out there. I'd like to thank you guys, but I must say all the fans out there, Adam and Jason and Mark and all of you, because without you, I don't have a career. As small as it might be, but still, without you guys, you're what makes writing worthwhile. And that's all. Thank you all very much. And let's hope that Twilight 2000 just stays a game.
Yeah, I'm a little too interested in my Xbox One now, and my heating pad, and my air conditioning.
Yeah, and my smartphone, and my hot meals, and my
Oh yeah, and let's not forget all the medications us old men are taking these days, because we've all got them now.
Oh yeah.
I think the lack of medications will definitely fall into what do they call it after the apocalypse, like the secondary kill. What they call it. People talk about the violence in this. I think we forgot to lump in everybody on medication is going to be in the secondary kill.
Yeah.
That's something when you mentioned it, I'm like, oh yes, we never included that. So, but again, folks, thank you for joining us this week for our Q&A with Frank Frey, who has done a lot of writing for the Twilight 2000 game. We appreciate you listening. Again, we'll be on schedule for 2 weeks from now. And I don't know what the subject is going to be yet, but I have an inkling of what I want to do. I had a suggestion come from one of our fans, and it was something that I was like, oh yeah, we've maybe touched on it, but we didn't have a general discussion on it. Is medicine and healthcare in the apocalypse? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's a good topic to talk about. We've again touched on it a little bit in places, but we've never really talked about medicine. So I think the next show we're going to talk about we're going to talk about your HMO in the apocalypse. So we're going to see.
Your HMO in the apocalypse is where you're sticking the maggots in the festering wound to clean it out. I think
basically. So so I think that's what's going to be our next topic in 2 weeks, folks. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you again very much, Frank. Thank you, Scott, and thank you for all our watchers. So we will see you in the wastelands. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.